That's right. It's the best football show. I'm Brian Baldinger, and that is Mark Schlereth, otherwise known as Stink, one of the great nicknames that have been given and bestowed upon any of us in this great game. And this is an app that you can find in the free Odyssey app. You can download it, like it described. You can find me and Mark all over. Mark's doing games at Fox Sports every week. I'm out there and doing national games. And so, Mark, I want to kind of get started. I thought, I always think that this is the one sport where coaching really matters. And not just head coaches, but developing players, assistant coaches, game planning. And I saw an example of it this week, Mark, and I watched it all year. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers couldn't run the ball since Tom Brady left it all. And you can find out a lot of different reasons why they could not run it. And this year, they're somewhere around 4th or 5th in the league, and they just ran the ball down the Chargers' throats at SoFi Stadium this weekend, and it was impressive. It was impressive because I think there's a couple things at play. It's Liam Coen, the offensive coordinator, is committed to the run. The addition of Graham Barton at center, I always think, Mark, you're about as strong in the offensive line as your center. Show me a bad offensive line, I'll show you a center that's a problem. And so I think Graham Barton has made a difference. And then I think the backs, Bucky Irving, is a good back. He sees the hole. He has a good burst. And I think it shocked the Chargers how well they ran the ball. And I think coaching matters in all this, Mark. And I see one of the great coaching jobs take place. I don't know what the Bucs are going to do down the stretch with 3 games to go, but they're in the driver's seat to go win that division for the 4th year in a row.
Yeah, I had them a couple of weeks ago, Baldy, on Fox, and sat down and had a really interesting conversation with Liam Coen, and then it went on into the hallway after that, and then it went on Sunday morning on the right.
Yeah.
And it really became more about the running game than it was anything else. And it's one of those situations, in the National Football League right now, it has become such a pass-happy league because all the rules are bent toward throwing the ball. Yeah. And, that's excitement, and people think that that's where points come from and this, that, and the other, and all the garbage that you've been sold as a fantasy football owner.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the really good coaches want to understand and want to know how to run the football.
Yeah.
And so we got into a really in-depth, just technique and just a technical conversation about running the football. And he was a fascinating guy to talk to because, he comes from an old wing T program that his coach was his father. Okay. And so he'll use some wing T principles in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And so that's where it comes from. He talks to his dad every week, and his dad, his one advice is, keep running the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And it's really interesting, Baldy, because there are so many coaches. I think the general population thinks that because you coach in the NFL, you're a good coach. And I'll be the first to tell you there's a lot of crappy coaches that coach in the National Football League, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the teams that really understand the running game, understand the value and the philosophical approach to the running game, but really understand the nuance of the running game. And this is where I get into, there's some teams that like volume and they like what you call a scheme running game, right? Yeah. Meaning that if every week
you're the outside zone,
right. Well, when they scheme up a running game, they're saying, "Hey, man, we're not going to go in with our identity. We want to see what you don't do well.
We do it. Yeah, we're going to scheme it up.
Right." And so we're going to see what you don't do well, and we're going to steal plays from different teams, and we're going to use those plays. And my thought process on that is always, man, you don't understand if that's not what you're versed in, and you haven't really studied it, you don't know the pitfalls of it, and you don't really know the nuance of it. And so as a player, and you'll appreciate this, like one of the jokes I have with my crew is you never upkick a 4-eye. And a 4-eye as a guard is an inside shade on the offensive tackle. And an upkick is an aggressive pass set, right? I'm going to go attack you. I'm going to upkick. Some people call it short set, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And we've got this joke where you don't ever up kick a 4-eye, and people, my producers and stuff, they don't really know what it means, but they'll say sometimes something will go wrong. We'll screw something up, and we'll say, oh, so and so up kicked the 4-eye. What an idiot,
It's a standing joke now.
Yeah, it's a joke. But the reason you don't up kick a 4-eye is because as a guard, as you up kick it, it gets you turned.
Yeah.
And it creates a short edge and a short inside edge. And so the way I learned that is I was a real good up kick guy, a real good short set guy. And the way I learned that is a guy got into a 4-eye and I attacked him and he beat my ass and hit the quarterback. And I was realized at that point, like, you can't do that. That's the problem of being a week-to-week scheme football team. You'd miss some of that nuance, and you don't know it until you get your ass kicked doing it, and you're like, oh, shoot, that cost us a game.
So I'll go back in time. I went up to Buffalo in free agency one year, Mark, and Tom Bresnahan was the offensive line coach up there in Buffalo. They had a great line. Wofford was up there and Ken Hall, and they had a good line. And then Thurman Thomas running the ball. But honestly, I could still teach you that run game in 5 minutes. I can still call it for you. 16, 18, like counters, inside dive, outside zone, draw. And the thing that was attractive about it wasn't just the simplicity. But to your point, though, Mark, is when you went out every individual period, we ran those plays. So we were never fooled by the inside 4-eye and how we were going to attack that.
Yeah.
We were never fooled if they got into an odd front. We were never fooled if they reduced the front and they played a barrel. Like, we saw every look, every day, in every individual period. And so we could never be fooled.
Yeah.
You might say, okay, well, we're going to stop Thurman Thomas inside zone. Okay, fine. We're still going to run it. We might have a counter to it, whatever. But, like, our individual periods and everything that we got good at was basically what we did on Sundays. And it wasn't, to your point, where we're just going to game plan and cherry pick plays because they worked last week for this other team.
Yeah. You know what? It's so interesting you say it, Baldy, because in my team that I played for in Denver, when we went, back-to-back world championships, and Terrell Davis went 1,400 yards and 1,700 yards and 2,000 yards in 3 consecutive seasons or whatever it was. We really ran 6 plays, and we put some window dressing on it, and we changed personnel groupings and formations and stuff, but we ran 6 plays, and I call it always the 10,000 hour rule. Yeah. Is, I've done this, or 10,000 play rule. I've done this play 10,000 times. There is nothing you can get into. Mm-hmm. There is no look that you can show me that I'm not prepared for, that I won't adjust to. But you've only defended it 200 times. So I'm better than you. Yeah. And I know that going in. So there was always that aspect of it that I think is a really important thing. And one of the things I do, like, I've had the opportunity, I'm sure you have too, where guys pick your brains, and I've consulted for several teams and come in and flown in and done that stuff. One of the things I tell teams that are struggling is, and this goes back to the movie City Slickers. Remember City Slickers, the Western? And Jack Palance is the old wise, hard-ass cowboy, right? And he goes, the secret to life. And these guys are all sitting on pins and needles waiting for it. He goes, is in one thing. He goes, one thing. And then he dies, right? And they're like, what's the one thing? They don't know. Yeah. So I'm like with these offensive line coaches and coordinators, I always say, find one thing you can do. Show me one thing that you can do well. Maybe it's, the deuce block on the front side of power. Okay. Maybe it's a zone scheme, whatever it is. Find me one play that you can do, that you can execute against anything 100% of the time, and you can have success with that one play. And then let's build an offense off of doing that. Let's find the adjunct plays that fit with that, because one of the things I always think about as a player is I want to make you play a scheme, not necessarily a block, but a scheme. Mm-hmm. So if I'm on the backside of tight zone and my footwork is perfect every time, and we're coming off and we're coming off and we're coming off, and you're trying to cross my face, you're trying to squeeze down that A gap, and we just keep coming off, and you're trying to squeeze, right? And we run it enough times, and all of a sudden I use that same exact footwork, but we're going power, and it's the front side. And I take those steps, and you squeeze, and then we wheel your ass over the top, and we take you 2 gaps out of where you're supposed to be because you're playing that scheme that was inside zone. Now all of a sudden, whoa, we got you down, and there's a hole the size of a garage door that your back can run through, and all of a sudden we got you right where we want you. So you can build off that one thing if you know what you're trying to accomplish. And too many coaches and too many organizations go, let's be good at everything. I want to be a great zone team. I want to be a great gap team. I want to be a great counter team. I want to be a great trap team. I want to be a great, and I'm like, you can't be good at everything. You just can't.
Right. So one of the other great coaching jobs this past week, Mark, I don't know if you've done any Packer games this year, but I'm a big fan of Matt LaFleur, Andy Stanovich, and the guys. And that Packer team went up to Seattle. They had won 4 in a row. They looked pretty good. They'd shut a bunch of teams down. Leonard Williams looked like he was a Pro Bowl player. I saw, first of all, Green Bay's offensive line and tight ends, they're all homegrown. They've drafted all those guys. Josh Myers, Elgton Jenkins, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, like the whole group. They went up to Seattle in that atmosphere, and they had a hell of a day. And then Matt LaFleur is committed to the run. They got some young wide receivers and the quarterback, he'd be hot, all that kind of stuff. I thought they won the line of scrimmage up there more. And I thought, when we're looking around this league, we're kind of advancing our games and sort of looking what else happened. I thought it was one of the really great coaching jobs. You look at, like their inside zone, Josh Jacobs is a hell of a back, but their inside zone, their foot to foot, their shoulder to shoulder mark, they're playing with good pad level in December. Sometimes you don't see that at all in this league right now at this time of the year because teams aren't practicing the right way, all that. I saw a well-coached team that won the line of scrimmage, and it just sort of jumped off the screen at me, Mark.
Yeah, they do. And LaFleur and that group do a great job with that. They've been that way for a while. It's funny. Before I moved out here to New York to do this full-time show on FS1, Breakfast Ball, you can check me out 8 o'clock every morning, Monday through Friday. But before I moved out here, I was coaching a little league team or a Pop Warner team with Peyton Manning. Okay. And so here's our coaching staff. It's Peyton, it's me, it's Terrell Davis, it's Brandon Stokely, right? So like we got a bunch of a couple of Hall of Famers on there.
That's some hardware right there, Mark.
Yeah, we got some grunts, won a bunch of Super Bowls. Anyhow, so we're coaching this team. And Peyton is an absolute freak show when it comes to like what he wants, the number of plays he has. Yeah. Like we'll go into a game plan with 12 years old. With 12-year-olds, we'll have 280 plays up. Like it's insane. Yeah. So he always gets me these late night like these texts, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm looking for a play. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for how would you block this? These things." And so he's like, "Hey, listen, man, I'm looking for some front side gun runs." So, when we call a gun formation, if you have, let's say your quarterback here and your running back here and the tight end is on that side, that's gun near, right? Okay. If he's on the opposite sides, so the tight end's to the right and the back's to the left and the quarterback's in the middle, that's gun far, right? And so he goes, I want some gun near runs to the strong side or some gun far runs, but to be front side runs. Because normally if you're in gun, let's say this is the quarterback and here's the running back. Well, when that play goes to the opposite side,
entry back.
Right. So you're going to the opposite side. So if you're on the left-hand side, you're running, mid-zone, you're running 16. That's just the only way you can run it. Right. And so there's not as many not as many plays. So the first thing I do is go to Packer tape. Because I think they have the best gun run scheme to get to the front side. They've got the most diverse scheme that I have watched over the last couple of years. And I cherry pick 5 or 6 plays from Green Bay, and I go, here's some plays, some front side run. Now, you got to coach them up, and the kids got to learn them and stuff. But here's some like near or far gun runs to the same side, and it's the Packers. And they're innovative, but they're well coached, Baldy. You've seen it, man. They come off together. The steps are together. Like you said, the pad level's right.
Mark, you remember like when we would break up in individual drills, we'd have centers and guards working on scoops and front side blocks.
Yeah.
And you have their tackles and tight ends, right? Working the combo blocks there. So literally the first play of the game, they're in a wide formation. This Tucker Kraft is a hell of a player.
Yeah.
He's a good, he's a nasty player. He loves blocking. He's actually really good at it. But I'm watching him and Zach Tom on the strong side actually run a combo block and cut the defense off to the linebacker. And Josh Jacobs, he's not going to miss a hole. Like, he cuts right off of that combo block there. And I'm like, how many places are you watching right now where the tackles and tight ends are really working foot to foot and together like that? It caught me by surprise because it really opened up the hole.
Yeah, no question. And that becomes one of those things that I think oftentimes, offensive lines get blamed a lot. And I've been saying this for months, and Troy Aikman said it on a broadcast. I've been saying it for years, but Troy Aikman said it on a broadcast. I go, either Troy and I see the game the same way, or he's stealing my stuff. No, I'm not. I'm kidding. But
you steal your stuff, Mark.
Right? No, but I've said forever. In today's game, sacks have become more of a quarterback-driven statistic than they are an offensive line-driven statistic.
No doubt.
And I was having this conversation with Sean Payton. He said the same thing. He goes, I believe sacks are mostly on the quarterback.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, you know what? Okay, so I'm not crazy. What I think is to be true, but it is one of those situations where quarterbacks drive a lot of that. There's a lot of 5-step ball out, 3-step ball out, no hitch type of throws. Mm-hmm. And that comes on to the quarterback. And in our day, there was so many more 7-step, like legit 7-step drops, and not play pass stuff, not where you're faking it and you're keeping 7 guys in. There were legit 7-step drops where we're getting 4 or 5 guys out. And it just doesn't operate that way anymore. So it really becomes one of those things where it is a quarterback kind of driven statistic. Yep. And the reason I bring that up is because
I hate seeing quarterbacks sack themselves, Mark.
Right. It drives you crazy. But one of the things that people don't really understand is how important the periphery guys are, the backs, the fullbacks, the tight ends. Hell, you get into the LA Rams and they run 12 personnel plays where they're using combination blocks with their wide receivers and tackles. Like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are like tight ends that play wide receiver.
That's
it's
the
amazing.
Jewel right there, Mark, is they're an 11 personnel team, but they play like a 12 personnel team.
Yeah.
And their receivers seal the backside, sometimes the front side. As receivers, they're being counted on.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp plays on the front side and tray blocks and quad blocks all the time. By the way, do you know what they call that in LA? Have you talked to Sean McVay about that? I know you talk to everybody, but have you talked
to Aaron Cromer when he was there? I learned a lot from him.
Right. Okay, so Aaron, they call that personnel grouping, they don't call it 11. They call it 11 and a half personnel.
Okay.
That's what they call it, 11 and a half, because those guys dabble in the tight end game.
The other thing what they do, Mark, is they'll bring the wide receiver in motion and block the backside linebacker. Mm-hmm. And so that you don't have to scoop up to it. You can keep everything onside, front side. And they come in and clean up with the receiver right in that like B-gap, A-gap area to kind of clean up on the backside of those linebackers and just get a chip on them,
right?
Get them thinking about you, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's where you get into the nickel run game, and you can push your offensive line to the front side linebacker. Normally where you have to push crack to that guy from the wide receiver on that side, we can push that whole thing over, cut back, run, and trust that wide receiver to get that backside player, that backside linebacker that we can't get to. So that goes back into the nickel run game and having a scheme. And understanding what you're trying to accomplish, and then getting hats on hats, because a lot of time in today's game, there's a guy that just not defended, and so then it becomes your running back's got a BYOB, bring your own blocker. That we don't got that guy. So it's pretty interesting. They're another team that I love watching play.
Yeah. The other thing, you talk about a hat on a hat. I mean, it's cliche, right? But like I see these teams turning guys loose, Mark, and I'm going, what happened to just blocking the most dangerous man? Like, why are we blocking the backside defensive end and turning the will linebacker loose?
Yeah,
like I'm watching the Giants, and they do this stuff all the time, And, I mean, they're not alone. There's other teams where I'm going, somebody's not identifying the personnel. I mean, this is just a mental thing here. It might as well be, a mental assignment here. But, you've got to at least give yourself a chance.
Right.
And block the most dangerous guys.
It drives me crazy. It drives me nuts. I'm like, how do we not know the number count?
Right.
How do we not know? And you know what I think it is, Baldy? I used to get this.
Before you answer, do you think, I've heard some teams right now have reduced a tremendous amount of pre-snap motion where, you're getting sometimes double motions, double shifts, right? The Dolphins are good for that. I don't think it helps them because they can't run the ball at all. But, I just think, there's almost too much movement. If I was a defensive coordinator, I would stem late all the time to try to mess up my blocking scheme. Now, we don't see it. I don't think these guys are, I don't know why they don't do it, but I would stem, like you see in college, I would stem late all the time just to mess with this.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. There is a ton of motion. As a matter of fact, early in the Broncos season, there was just a ton of motion, and there were so many misidentification and missed blocks that Sean Payton became far more stagnant in what they were doing. So it's a great point because anytime you're motioning, you're changing strengths. Now all of a sudden you're bringing different guys into the box. So you motion from the right to the left, and all of a sudden the safeties rotate, and the guy that was down, now all of a sudden the right-handed safety comes down, the left-handed bails that right. So it changes those number counts. I think one of the problems, and this happened, in my career, late in my career, I would get young kids that would come in, that I'm kind of trying to mentor, and they'd be like, hey, here's the mics. It's 56 and it's 58. And the third mic is 52. And I'd be like, shit can that. You cannot memorize numbers because guys just bounce around and play different positions. You've got to do what we call spot blocking. If this guy is in the position of the Mike backer, we take him. And then I always used to tell guys, can you count to 2? And they'd be like, yeah. And I go, okay, do it for me. They'd like, I'm not going to, no, count to 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then I would say, okay, so as you identify the box, you got 4 down linemen. Number 1, weak is Will. Number 1, strong is is Sam. So number 2, whether you go from right to left or left to right, is the Mike backer. And then that's all you have to do. So even in nickel, if you look at nickel, when you take a Will out and move a nickel guy in, he becomes 1, and the next guy becomes the Mike, number 2. And then it becomes spot blocking. And if a guy gets taken out of the formation, and I see this all the time, so we're going to the front side guy, and all of a sudden you motion out and he walks outside the box, screw him.
Right.
Turn up and turn the next guy in that spot becomes your backer, right?
Yeah.
And forget that guy.
Yeah.
And now the back has to understand, all right, that dude's not going to be blocked. So even if we're wide zone, even if we're wide zone, say to the left, what's going to happen is because he'll be unblocked, he'll start making his way back in once we snap the ball. I'm going to hug to the backside. I'm already automatically going, I'm going to get a cutback. It's just going to be a little earlier. I'm still going to press, but it's going to be a little bit earlier so I can get fast flow and then cut back up in there. And I just don't think people understand or teams understand how to just block an area as opposed to just identifying a guy.
So there was a cardinal rule back in the day when we played, Mark, where if you wanted to run counter trey, you had to seal the backside end somehow. The center couldn't work back to choke. And I watched some teams try to run that play like they don't even know that rule. And I see these ends just trailing the play. I saw Myles Garrett the other day just trail the play and make the play. And I'm like, you can't have that play. You can't run that play if you're not accounting for that end whose job basically is to trail the play. And I look at some of the basics and I'm going, you talk about to start this pod today, Mark, coaching is not very good. It's just a staple of that play that if you want to run it, weak or strong, whoever's on that backside right there maybe you got to pull the fullback and the tight end. Maybe you got to seal with the tackle and pull somebody else, as the wrapper. But I watched that play, it drives me nuts. The one other team that pulls a lot is Buffalo, Mark. They run a lot of tackle trap. Whether it's Spencer Brown or Deion Dawkins, they run it a ton. And they do a lot of – it's actually pretty creative because they'll run to the pull, they'll run away from the pull,
yeah,
and then they'll play action off both sides and throw it. And they kind of get you thinking, okay, we're going to play this trap. We're going to play this trap. We got the guard sealing. Dawkins is pulling. Here comes James Cook. Oh, here comes Josh Allen on, the fake and go. And it's a really good package. Nobody else does it like Buffalo, but it's a strong package, especially because the quarterback is such a great threat.
Yeah, there's that, and then they play off of that. Like you're getting all that action to pull, and all of a sudden you're running something naked out the backside where it's just like a flip to the back, and it's like everybody's eye, like it's so like those big bodies coming across formation. You just can't help but go, I got to get over there, and then you get somebody out there on the edge. You're right. Most of the counter I see today in today's game, Baldy, different than when you and I played. They rarely ever pull the tackle. It's always fullback counter or it's always tight end counter, right? With a guard pulling on kick out and that tight end or that fullback become the wrapper on that. Very rarely do you ever see guard, tackle. And I don't know if that's because of, the wide nine type of stuff and some of the wider defenses, the centers can't get back there and cut that guy off. I'm sure it has, something to do with that stuff. But I see the same thing, man. Very, very little counter like we used to run it back in the day, man. That's all we ran back in my Washington days, man. I came in the league at about 6'3.5". I exited at 6'2", running all those damn counters back in the day.
Well, I remember coming back. I remember Chris Hinton was our tackle in Indianapolis for a while, and he was a great player. But it was about 6 tackle traps into the game. You go, they ain't running this anymore, Ball. You go out there. You go out and play tackle. I'll play guard. We'll switch it. Yeah. I'm not banging my head into that guy anymore like that. There was some of that going on. The great thing about this podcast here, Mark, is we just talked 30 minutes of football and haven't mentioned a single quarterback in the sleep.
Right? I love it.
I met Joe Alt for the first time the other day.
Okay.
So my brother played with his dad. He's so enormous. It's freaky.
Yeah.
How big he is. But probably a little bit like Jacoby back in the day, but even bigger and wider. But so I had Tristan Wirfs, Rashawn Slater, and Joe Alt in the game. I'm like, I told my play-by-play guy, I might just talk about these tackles today. I might not even talk about the guy handing the ball off, Baker Mayfield, whatever. Like it was just fun to see like tackles of that caliber out there on the field.
Dude, I met Tristan the other day. Oh. How thick, dude, his ass and legs and
he's a freak, man. And can move.
He's
a great athlete.
He is like a California redwood.
Yeah.
From the shoulders down, there's no difference in size. And athletically, his movement skills, like you would not think as thick as he is built that he could move the way he moves. It's remarkable. That dude's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I love watching him play. Wow, what a group of tackles you had. I'll tell you what, the Gedeke kid is not built like that, but he's a good player.
Yeah. You know what he is also, Mark? I always think every offensive line needs an alpha, like just a dog,
Yeah.
Well, Gedeke is that guy for Tampa.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying Tristan can't be and Graham Barton isn't chasing and Cody Mock can't do this, but Gedeke is a guy that's going to, like in practice, he's going to throw the first punch. He's going to get the party started. Like he's got that edge to him.
Yeah.
That I think really helps that whole group up there.
We started talking about the Tampa Bay run game, and you mentioned Barton a couple times. That kid that plays center for them, that's been the straw that stirs the drink for their run game. He has made he's got some nasty to him. He's got some finish to him. He plays with some leverage and some strength at the point of attack.
Yeah.
But he's athletic, man.
Yeah,
that dude can get out and pull. That dude can get to the second level. Like I was like that was one where there were a lot of rewindable moments for me going, damn. And I talked to Jason Light, their general manager. I go, dude, you found yourself one there because that kid could play.
No, he was sending me clips in training camp going up against Vita Vea. Like he was taking Vita Vea off the ball. He was like sending me these clips. I'm like, all right. Like, I can't wait to see the action, but he's lived up to all.
Absolutely.
All right, Mark, listen, I think that's enough trench talk here for this week. I don't want people's heads to explode, but we got to do this on a regular basis. Where are you at this weekend, Mark? What do you got?
I'm in Carolina with Arizona, and I'm really looking forward to Arizona's got a chance. Now they're behind the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win that division, but it'll be interesting to see how Arizona. One thing I'll tell you about Arizona, Jonathan Gannon has those guys playing their ass off. They play hard. They are not the most talented team. I'm telling you, especially their front seven is not the most talented front seven. But, man, they play their asses off. They play hard.
On that side of the ball they did last year, and that offensive line is pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I mean, that Pro Holt's a good player, and Paris Johnson's got to a good start in this business, and James Conner is, you want that guy on your football team.
Yeah, if you line up James Carter with every back in the National Football League, he comes in last in running 40s, and he's the one dude I want on my team more than just about anybody because he is hard-nosed. That kid can play, man. He's a special talent. No,
it's going to be good. You'll have a good time. That guy, that right guard for Carolina, Mark, Robert Hunt, is a good football player, man.
Oh, yeah. I did a game a couple of that dude. I'll tell you what, the other guy that's playing really well for Carolina, and I'll let you go with this, Damian Lewis from Seattle. He's moved over to Carolina. That guy has got, he's big, he's thick, he's powerful. But boy, I tell you what, you want to talk about great steps, Baldy. Just great steps. Good takeoff. I really like him a lot. All right, buddy. Always good to connect, man.
Thanks, Mark. Have a great weekend. See you, buddy.
You too, buddy.